Welcome to my studio. We talked about process the last time we talked, and the process, mental process, the concepts, the things behind painting, what motivates you to paint, the thing that feeds your creativity. Today we're going to talk about process, but we're going to talk about the physical process, the actual physical process of making paint, putting paint on a canvas. And so primarily we're going to start with the fact standing. If you notice, I have an easel that I stand at. When I was going to the Art Institute in Kansas City 50 years ago and majoring in painting, the whole painting department had stand easels. You didn't sit down and paint, you stood and paint. Why is that? It's because of movement. It's because without standing, you cannot get that gestural quality that paintings require. Paintings are gestures. And so sitting down, the problem with sitting down with the writing kind of attitude is, you're tight and restrained. Now, if you're wanting to do very tight work, then, that's going to work for you. But if you're wanting to do paintings where you see brush strokes and it's gestural, then you really need to try standing. If you physically can't stand, then at least get up once in a while and move around and get back and look at your painting. So standing is important to the physical aspects of painting. It allows you to be more gestural. Talking about gestural, holding a brush. The way we hold a brush affects the brush stroke. For years, I painted I held a brush like you hold a pencil. I painted like this, which, it works, but it kept me limited in my movement. One day, years ago, I was at a paint out with several prominent artists, people whose work that I really liked, and I noticed they were all holding the brush this way. And it's like, why are they holding the brush that way? And so I immediately flipped the brush in my hand and started painting that way. It felt really awkward. It's strange, different. But I noticed almost instantly that it affected my brushwork, my calligraphy. And I continued to do that. It didn't take long when all of a sudden it became natural. And now this is the only way I paint. I hold the brush this way. As far as brushes go, this is called an angular sash. And this is probably my favorite brush of all time. This is a pretty good size. This is a 12, I believe. Why an angular sash? Because just by the movement of my hand and the way I hold the brush, I can create a fine line. I can create a delicate, almost, lost line, or I can create a very big gestural brush stroke. So I'm not changing brushes all the time. These kinds of things keep us in the flow and the movement of painting. This is part of the physical process. Standing, like I said earlier, is really important for that aspect, for being able to move and paint. The other aspect of standing at your easel that's equally important is moving back from the painting. All paintings have a viewing distance, and the viewing distance varies usually according to the size of the painting. The smaller the painting, the closer the viewing distance. The larger the painting, the farther back people view it. It's an intuitive thing. When I was going to college, across the street from me was the Nelson Atkins Museum, and I spent a lot of time over there. And I got to watching people looking at paintings. And it was almost like there was a dot on the floor that told them where to stand. Invariably, they go up to the painting, read the card about the art and the artist and all that kind of stuff, and then all back up to this spot and look at the painting. So a painting kind of tells you the viewing distance. And if you're standing and you're working on the painting, then you're going to move back more often. I create a path when I'm out painting plein air because I'm moving back and forth so much to the easel. I have a chair in my studio that's about 12 feet away from my easel. And like Da Vinci said, you must look at your painting as much as you paint on the painting. So the chair, when I don't fall asleep, the chair is really nice to sit and study the painting. It makes you view the painting from the viewing distance. This painting, this is not the viewing distance on this painting. This is the working distance because my arm is only this long. The viewing distance on this painting is probably about this distance here. So paintings do have a viewing distance. And when you're standing, you automatically will move back and look at your painting through the process. And and facilitates the process of painting. It makes it better. It makes it easier. Now I want to talk about lighting. And lighting, if you're painting in your kitchen, do the best you can with lighting, but be conscious of the lighting. Be aware that the lighting affects all the colors in the paint. If you notice in my studio, I have a fluorescent light over my palette. Turning it off, look at the difference in color. Okay, turn it back on. This fluorescent light has daylight bulbs in it, and so it's really on the cooler side of the spectrum. I have quartz halogen lights like they use to display paintings in galleries. Now, if you'll turn those down off the rheostat, you can see the change where the warm side of the spectrum goes. Now, if you'll notice the two lights together create a more full spectrum. Full spectrum is daylight. The best painting is absolutely daylight. If you have natural light and a lot of natural light flooding your workspace, then that's the best. I have northern light in my studio. The house was built so that we faced it north, so my studio would have northern light. Northern light is constant. It's day-long light. It stays the same all day long. It's the best light there is for a studio. So, these things, be aware of these things when you set up to paint. Do the best you can. There are little tripod stands now with LEDs that are broad spectrum that can help to light your canvas. One thing is, if you're painting outside, don't allow direct sunlight, if you can, to hit your painting surface or your palette, because it washes everything out. So these things are all part of the physical process of painting. Holding brushes, the kinds of brushes. Paint with big brushes. The bigger the brush, the better. Smaller brushes make us tight. Again, painting is about gesture. It's about paint. You should see, to an extent, you should see the brushwork of the artist. You should see the calligraphy behind the image that they're showing us. So these things are all important. Studio space, again, do the best you can. If you have a dedicated studio space, it's much easier to orchestrate these kinds of things. I like music in my studio space. So I have a stereo set up and I listen to jazz or classical, something that allows me to get in the flow, if you will. But these things all affect how we paint. Your studio, whether it's your kitchen, spare bedroom, whatever, you should be able to make it accommodate you physically being able to paint. Whatever that requires, whatever your personal situation is. Because the physical aspect, if you don't think about it and you just arbitrarily sit down and at the table or whatever and start to create art, these things all handicap you. If you're not really thinking about the process, you're holding yourself back. Painting is a lot of fun. It's about the process. Don't forget that, you guys. It's about the process. This whole act. That's why we paint. Have a good day.